Okay, so it's clear I haven't been here in the dungeon for a while, but I'm back and I'm going to continue on with my short, not really, but kind of DIY tutorial videos. Today's video is going to be about this, my hand in a jar. No Mad Scientist lair is complete without body parts in a jar, don't you think? Yeah, that's the stuff. This one was fun, but also a bit of a pain in the ass for some kind of weird reasons. Some of it is a little labor intensive, but the main obstacle was just the availability, or lack thereof, of the parts I really wanted to use. So I had to improvise a bit, but ultimately it came out looking pretty much the way I envisioned it. So stay tuned and get a closer look at the inner workings of my Mad Scientist hand in a jar. The first thing I needed was a big clear jar so that I would know how big to make the frame, and that was the first irritating hurdle I encountered. I knew that I wanted a plastic jar and not a glass jar because glass would be heavy and breakable, but clear plastic jars of this kind are a little hard to find and really expensive, both in stores and online, and that's just not how I roll. Strangely enough, it's actually cheaper to buy one that's already filled with something than to buy an empty one. I got this one from Big Lots and it used to contain cheese puffs. It was only $5 compared to $20 for a new empty one. Plus, then I had cheese puffs to eat while I was making the damn thing, so that's a win-win, right? I just washed it out real good and then took the label off with some Crud Cutter. Truth be told, I actually messed up on my first attempt at this and had to go back to Big Lots and buy another container of cheese puffs. Didn't really complain though. Once I had the jar, I also needed to make sure that I could find a prop hand that would fit inside of it. I originally used one that I got from Dollar Tree, which looked alright, but very plasticky and not at all realistic. Then I saw this one in At Home. If you're not familiar with them, At Home is a chain of large home goods stores located all around the country, so hopefully there's one near you because they sell some good stuff. Anyway, this hand cost $8, but it looks really good and it fit perfectly inside the jar. I ran a long machine screw through the bottom of the jar and then sealed the hole with waterproof glue because this jar is going to be filled with water. Then I drilled a small hole in the middle fingertip to keep the hand from moving around too much. Movement might actually have been a nice touch, but I was worried that it would want to keep gravitating to the back of the jar and making it harder to see, so I went for the stationary look instead. So now that the jar situation was sorted out, I could build the frame around it. Now, much like the green light fixture in one of my earlier videos, the basic frame of this is just made from some old reclaimed fence wood that I had lying around.
Whenever I'm watching your show, you give me wood.
Well, I can't do that. You'll have to go and get it for yourself, but I can make it a little bit easier for you.
Got any blue pills?
You're looking for ED medication?
No, not like that. As I said before, if you don't happen to have a lot of old wood lying around, it's available and fairly cheap to buy at hardware stores. Or if you're on a really tight budget, you can get creative and go dumpster diving for some old pallets. Just don't do anything illegal. I will disavow all knowledge of you if you do.
The Secretary will disavow any knowledge of your actions. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
I knew that I wanted there to be lights as well as bubbles in the water, so I built the frame with this hollow space in the back to accommodate cords and battery packs, depending on what kind of lights I decided to use, and then cut holes to run the cords through. Like before, I measured, cut, sanded, and stained the wood with this dark cherry color again because I just think it looks nice and kind of vintagey. The whole thing is really held together from this side with these corner braces, and that allows me to quickly and easily take the top off if all I need to do is refill the water or adjust the pump tubing without having to mess around with the whole thing too much. These little bits on the side were just some random plastic tubing I had lying around that I screwed on for aesthetic purposes. The lights took a little effort, but I like the solution that I eventually came up with. This is electroluminescent or EL wire, and they sell it a lot of places for cheap around Halloween. It was like $4 for this setup. So I flipped the jar upside down and put a couple pieces of double stick tape on the bottom, and then just started coiling the EL wire around it, sticking it to the tape with each revolution. Once that was done, I just covered it all with some clear packing tape. Now what this did was create a very wide, very flat area of very subtle lighting that takes up almost no space at all. The battery pack on this rig is actually connected by a little plug that you can disconnect from the back if you ever want to take the jar out without having to feed the battery pack through the hole. The bubbles come from this fairly basic aquarium pump. I actually had this lying around from another project, but they only cost about $10 to $15 to buy, plus a couple extra bucks for the tubing. And it's optional, but I think it really adds to the effect. Once the jar is filled with water and the lights are on, you can see how the light reflects off the bubbles and gives this a really interesting look. I'm pretty impressed with how it turned out. I don't love that it's pretty heavy once it's filled with water, but since I like the bubbling look, I can live with it. I don't intend to move it around too much anyway. I was thinking that if you don't want to go the water and bubble route, you could maybe attach a tube to a small fogger and run it into here. That would probably look really good with blinking lights. It would be much lighter and potentially less messy than having this huge jar of water hanging around. I might give that a try someday and post an update, unless one of you enterprising viewers beats me to it, in which case, leave me a comment because I look forward to seeing it. That's about all I have to say on this one. It was probably the most difficult of the projects I've completed recently, mostly due to finding specialty materials and also mixing electricity with water, which is never fun. But I survived, and now I pass this along to you. If your hands are not in jars and are still attached to your bodies, you can use them to hit those like and subscribe buttons, or leave me a comment if you like this video. Thanks a lot. We'll see you here next time.